My name is Avery Collins, and this story begins the day I realized I was no longer living alone in my own apartment. My parents had been breaking in for months, rearranging my things, checking my fridge, letting my sister sleep in my bed, always insisting it was for my safety, always pretending it was love. I tried talking. I tried boundaries. I even changed the locks. But nothing prepared me for the moment they crossed a line I could never uncross, so I moved out without telling them. I disappeared. And the twist? They panicked so badly that what happened next involved a new tenant, a 911 call, and police officers demanding explanations none of us were ready to give. Before I take you through everything, tell me, have you ever felt like the people who claimed to love you most were also the ones invading your life the deepest? And as you're listening now, where are you watching from, and what time is it for you? And if you really want to understand why I eventually vanished from my own life, you have to go back with me back to the years when privacy was a foreign concept and boundaries were something that existed only in other families. From the age of 13 to 17, my bedroom door might as well have been made of glass. My mom had a habit of entering without knocking, moving through my space as if it were simply an extension of her own. She read my journals to make sure I wasn't hiding anything dangerous, shook out my backpack to inspect every folder, every scrap of paper, every note passed between friends, and regularly scrolled through my phone under the guise of parental vigilance. If I wanted to study at the library with classmates, she insisted I stay home where she could see me. Calling it working from home before working from home was a thing, even though all I wanted was to sit at a round table with friends like a normal teenager. My dad, quieter but no less intrusive, installed a location tracking app on my phone, telling me it was only for emergencies. But emergencies somehow included every time I biked to the park, visited a friend, or stayed 10 minutes longer at school. Just making sure you're safe, he'd say, proudly pointing at the moving dot on his screen like I was a delivery package en route. When I was 15, I had my first boyfriend, a sweet, nervous boy named Tyler, who always smelled faintly of spearmint gum. We texted shy little messages about homework and weekend plans, nothing remotely scandalous. But one night, I left my phone charging on the kitchen counter, and my mom picked it up. She read every conversation, every emoji, every awkward joke. Then, during dinner, she reenacted the messages dramatically, laughing until she cried while my dad chuckled and Lily, my younger sister, snorted so loudly milk came out of her nose. I remember sitting there, cheeks burning, wanting to disappear under the table because something tender and private had been turned into a comedy skit for family entertainment. Tyler broke up with me a week later, saying my mom scared him. I didn't blame him. Lily, meanwhile, lived an entirely different childhood. While my drawers were inspected, her room was a no-go zone. While my online activity was monitored, she stayed up gaming with friends until 3 a.m. without a single consequence. When she skipped class, Mom said she was going through a phase. When I missed one assignment, Mom grounded me for 2 weeks so I could learn discipline. Lily could do no wrong. I could do very little right. It wasn't that she was a bad person, she just grew up believing the world, including me, should bend to her comfort, and our parents reinforced that belief every single day. One of the most humiliating moments of my teenage years happened during a sleepover at my friend Madison's house. Madison's parents had welcomed me warmly, offered snacks, and let us choose movies. It felt like a glimpse into a different kind of family, one that trusted their children. But at 9:30 p.m., my mom rang the doorbell. Not to pick me up, not because of an emergency, but to make sure the house was clean and safe. She walked straight into Madison's bedroom, lifted the corners of the mattress to check for dust mites, opened drawers, sniffed a pillow, and interrogated Madison's mom about supervision, curfews, and Wi-Fi passwords. I wanted to melt into the carpet. Madison never invited me back. By the time I graduated high school, I was exhausted from being watched, followed, and corrected. I dreamed of attending college on the opposite coast, Seattle, Boston, anywhere oceans or mountains could buffer me from the constant intrusion. But life, as it often does, made the practical choice easier than the emotional one. Scholarships, job prospects, and my major all pointed to Colorado. And the best opportunities weren't even in Boulder or Colorado Springs, they were in Denver, just a short drive from the suburb where I'd grown up under my parents' microscope. Moving away entirely felt impossible financially, so I compromised. I moved 30 minutes south, into the city, telling myself that adulthood alone would give me the space I'd been craving since childhood. I believed that once I paid my own rent, cooked my own meals, and shut my own apartment door, the unwritten rules of American independence would take over. Parents, I told myself, don't just show up uninvited to their adult children's homes. They don't check their fridges or rearrange their laundry or hand out spare keys like party favors. I truly thought that being 29, financially independent, and living alone in Denver would be enough to establish a boundary my family had never respected, but surely would now. I was wrong. The seeds of everything that would eventually happen, the break-ins, the stolen privacy, the panic, the police were planted long before I ever signed that first lease. I just didn't know it yet. The first intrusion occurred when I woke on a quiet Sunday morning to a sound that did not belong in my apartment, the sharp hiss of oil hitting a hot pan, followed by the rhythmic scrape of a wooden spoon against metal. For a moment, half buried under my blankets, I thought it was the remnants of a dream. But then came the unmistakable scent of onions browning, garlic sizzling, and something thick and savory bubbling on low heat. I bolted upright, heart sinking with a familiarity I didn't want to acknowledge. The only people who cooked like that, the only people who cooked at all in my apartment, were the ones who shouldn't have been anywhere near it. I swung my legs out of bed and walked into the hallway, still groggy, my hair tangled and my sweatshirt half-zipped. The moment I stepped into the living area, the scene before me punched the air out of my lungs. My mother, Karen, was standing in my kitchen wearing one of her floral aprons, stirring a pot of beef stew as if she had woken up here, as if this were a normal Sunday morning in a house she owned. My father was lounging on my sofa, legs crossed, TV remote in hand, wearing the same pair of brown house slippers he always wore at home. Except this wasn't their home, it was mine. Or so I thought. "Good morning, sweetie," my mom said without turning around, as if I were late to my own kitchen. "I figured you'd sleep in. You always stay up too late on weekends." I blinked, struggling to find my voice. "Mom. Dad. How did you get in here?" My mother finally faced me, eyebrows raised as though the answer were obvious. She reached into the pocket of her apron and dangled a small silver key between two fingers. "Emergency key," she said lightly. "Just to look?" My dad chuckled at her joke, adjusting himself deeper into the sofa cushions. I didn't laugh. The key swung gently, reflecting strips of morning sunlight off its edge, and something inside me twisted. I had given it to her months ago, reluctantly but dutifully, because she insisted every responsible daughter provided one, in case something happened. I had imagined situations like fainting in the shower, losing consciousness, or, I don't know, a gas leak, actual emergencies. Not this. "Mom," I said slowly, "an emergency key is for emergencies. You can't just let yourself in whenever you want." "Don't be dramatic," she replied, turning back to the pot. "Your fridge was empty except for those sad little salads. No one can live on salad. People need real food." She said real food, like it was a moral obligation she had sworn to uphold. I opened my fridge in disbelief. Some of my containers had been pushed to the back. In their place were glass jars of her homemade pickles, plastic containers of leftovers, beef broth, carrots, potatoes, celery, all the ingredients she deemed essential for someone working too much to take care of herself. Before I could protest, she began rearranging things with the efficiency of someone organizing her own kitchen, moving my plates to another cabinet, stacking my mugs differently, tossing out the frozen meals I'd bought on sale. "These are full of chemicals," she muttered. "Why waste money on poison?" My father chimed in without looking up from the TV. "Your mother's just trying to help. We drove all the way here to make sure you're doing okay. The neighborhood looks a little rough." "My neighborhood is fine," I said, a little too sharply. Mom turned, giving me the kind of look that made me feel 12 again. What kind of daughter talks to her own mother like she's a stranger? "We came because we care." She emphasized the last word, as if it invalidated everything else. I tried to steady myself. I just want you to text first next time. Or call, that's all. She clicked her tongue. Text? Call? For what? This is your home, but you're still my child. If I see my daughter isn't eating right or sleeping right, I'm supposed to ignore it? Before I could answer, she lifted the lid of the pot and stirred. Taste this. It's almost done. I didn't taste it, I couldn't. My mind was spinning. How many times had they done this before today? How many mornings had they been here while I was at work? Had they opened drawers? Read mail? Watched me sleep? The questions piled up, heavy and suffocating. But my mother, oblivious or unwilling to see my discomfort, wiped her hands on her apron, walked to the counter, and placed a small keyring next to my fruit bowl, a ring holding 2 additional keys I had never seen. Here, she said casually. Here's the gate key and the mailbox key. So, it's convenient. To make what convenient? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. So, next time we don't have to bother you, she said, smiling as though she had gifted me something precious. I stood there frozen, wanting to push back, to demand my space, to insist this wasn't okay. But years of conditioning tugged like invisible strings, and all I managed was a stiff nod. Mom kissed my cheek before leaving. Dad waved from the door, and their footsteps faded down the hallway. I looked at the new keyring sitting on my counter like a warning light I was too scared to acknowledge. A part of me already knew this wasn't the last time. But instead of addressing the fear curling in my stomach, I told myself the same lie I had repeated since childhood. Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe this is normal. Maybe this is just family. And for now, that lie was easier than facing the truth. 2 days. I was gone for exactly 48 hours on a short work trip to Boulder, meetings, a conference, a networking dinner, and the entire time I let myself believe that maybe things were settling down. My parents hadn't mentioned coming over again, and I naively assumed the conversation about boundaries, thin as it was, had stuck somewhere in my mother's mind. When I unlocked my apartment door that Thursday evening, suitcase rolling behind me, I expected the familiar quiet, the faint lavender scent from my diffuser, the sense of relief that came from stepping into a space that was supposed to be mine. Instead, I stepped into the unmistakable chaos of someone else's presence. The first thing I noticed was my bed. The comforter was rumpled, pushed toward the end of the mattress, and the pillows were dented in 2 distinct shapes. My sheets had impressions I did not leave, evidence of someone having slept there, recently, comfortably, without permission. I stood frozen in the doorway of my bedroom, my mind trying to make excuses faster than my eyes could absorb the truth. Maybe the mattress was settling weird. Maybe I forgot to make the bed before I left. But I'm meticulous. I never forget. And the indentation on the right side of the bed was unmistakably fresh. The smell hit next a mix of ketchup, cold fries, and cheap fast food burgers. I walked into the kitchen to find 3 greasy containers stacked haphazardly on the counter, napkins balled up and tossed nearby, a half-finished soda sweating beside the sink. My trash can overflowed with crumpled wrappers that weren't mine. It felt like someone had thrown a late-night party in my absence, except there was no party here, only entitlement. My stomach tightened as I moved toward my desk. My laptop, which I always left centered, was shifted to the side, angled awkwardly, as if someone had pushed it away to make room for their elbows. The screen, normally off, was dimly glowing, a sign it had been opened and closed not long ago. I checked the browser history even though I was scared to know. YouTube videos, random Google searches, some TikTok dances I didn't recognize. Someone had used my laptop like it was their personal entertainment device. Then I turned to my closet. The sliding door was wide open, and inside, my clothes were a disaster: hangers crooked, jackets thrown over shoe boxes, a couple of dresses missing entirely. My favorite sweater, the one I always folded on the top shelf, was gone. A pair of boots had been moved from the floor to the bed. And worst of all, makeup items on my vanity were smudged and misplaced, as if someone had tested them before a night out. My breath shook. Not from fear, but from the deep, hollow violations spreading through my chest. Someone had lived in my space, slept, eaten, dressed, touched my belongings while I was 2 cities away earning a paycheck to support a life that apparently wasn't even considered mine to control. I dialed my mother immediately. She picked up on the first ring, her voice maddeningly cheerful. Avery. You're back early, how was Boulder? I didn't bother with pleasantries. Mom. I said, my voice tense. Someone has been in my apartment. Oh, she answered casually, as if I'd mentioned the weather. Yes, that was Lily. She needed a place to stay for a night or two. She and that boyfriend of hers had another big fight. I felt my jaw clench. Mom, you let Lily stay here? Without telling me? You weren't home, she said simply, as though absence equaled consent. And Lily was crying, completely heartbroken. She needed somewhere safe. You're not home anyway, so Mom, let Lily use it. My grip tightened on the phone. Why didn't you ask me? This time, her tone sharpened. Avery, you're way too selfish. Your sister is going through a crisis, and all you care about is your furniture? Your laptop? I don't know what happened to you ever since you moved out. Heat crept up my neck. I ended the call before I said something I'd regret. But I couldn't leave it there. I called Lily next. She answered with a tired groan. Hey, what's up? Did you stay in my apartment? I asked. There was a pause. Yeah? I thought Mom told you. She didn't. Oh, Lily sounded unbothered, unconcerned. Well, I figured you wouldn't mind. You weren't using it. And your bed is way more comfortable than mine. That last sentence was delivered casually, as if my personal space was a community resource. Lily, I said slowly. You can't just use my apartment without asking me. That's not okay. She sighed dramatically. Avery, relax. Mom said you're always working or traveling anyway. She said you don't need the place as much. If it's empty, why can't I stay here sometimes? It's not like you're married or have kids. It was said with a light laugh, but the weight of it crushed something inside me. In that moment, I realized my family didn't see my apartment as mine. They saw it as an extension of the Collins household, a satellite location they could use whenever convenient, a spare bedroom, a storage unit, a crash pad, whatever suited the crisis of the day. When Lily hung up, offering a breezy, "Love you. Don't be mad," I stood in the center of my living room, surrounded by the mess they left behind, and felt my sense of ownership slip like sand through my fingers. My home, my sanctuary, had been reduced to a backup plan. A place I paid for, but didn't control. A place where my absence was considered permission. For the first time since moving out, a chilling thought settled over me. Maybe I wasn't living independently at all. Maybe I had just relocated the same problem into a new zip code. And with that realization, came something I hadn't felt since childhood, a deep, quiet dread that whispered, "This is only the beginning." I drove to my parents' house with a knot in my stomach so tight it felt like it was pulling my ribs inward. Their home sat in a quiet Denver suburb, the kind of place where lawns were trimmed with military precision and wreaths changed with every season. I parked in the driveway, staring for a moment at the windows glowing warm against the afternoon sun, wondering how a house that looked so peaceful from the outside could feel so suffocating the moment you stepped through the door. When I walked in, the smell hit me first: fresh apple pie. Cinnamon and butter melting into the air like a Norman Rockwell painting brought to life. My mother loved baking on weekends, and on any other day, I might have found comfort in it. But today, it felt manipulative, like she was weaponizing nostalgia. My father was at the kitchen table reading the paper, and my mother was pulling a pie out of the oven, cheeks flushed with pride. It looked like one of those commercials where everything is perfect: family, home, warmth. Except none of it was real, not today. "Hi, sweetie," my mom said brightly, setting the pie down. "You want a slice? It's your favorite." I didn't sit. "Mom," I said, steadying my voice. "I need the spare key back." The smile froze on her face, then dissolved. She turned slowly, her expression shifting from confusion to offense in a matter of seconds. "What did you just say?" I swallowed hard. "The key. I want it back." The timer on the oven beeped pointlessly in the background, slicing through the silence. My dad lowered the newspaper, frowning. My mom placed one hand on her hip and stared at me like I'd just told her I was moving to another planet. "Avery," she said, voice sharpening. I raised you for 29 years, and now you're telling me you want me to return a key to your home? You're acting like I'm some stranger. You came into my apartment without asking. I reminded her. You let Lily stay there without telling me. You went through my things. Mom, that's not normal. And it's not okay. She gasped, as if deeply wounded. Not normal? I'm your mother. I have every right to check on my child. I didn't snoop. I cleaned. I cooked. I made sure you were eating. I'm sorry, I cared too much. There it was, the classic turn, the emotional alchemy where her violations transformed into martyrdom within seconds. My father stood now, walking toward us with slow, deliberate steps. Avery, your mom didn't mean any harm. You live alone in the city. Things happen. It's dangerous. Parents keeping a key is common sense. Not if you use it whenever you want, I said. Not if you give it to Lily. Not if you treat my home like it's your second living room. My mom's face twisted. We didn't treat it like anything. We stepped in to help. We always help. That's what family does. And prove it in Poking's place and in 9. She wiped her hands on a dish towel, suddenly trembling, tears forming quickly, too quickly, like she had spent years perfecting the performance. I can't believe you're doing this to me, she cried, voice cracking. After everything I've sacrificed? After working extra shifts so you could have school clothes? After paying for your driving classes, your dental bills, your... She faltered dramatically before continuing. This is how you repay me? By accusing me of, what? Caring too much? The air thickened until it felt like I was breathing, honey, heavy, slow, sticky with guilt. My father stepped beside her, putting an arm around her shoulders. Avery, he said with a sigh, we're not giving the key back. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. What? You heard me, he said firmly. We're your parents. We need to be able to check on you. If something happens, we can't just stand outside helpless. Having the key is reasonable. Reasonable? I almost laughed. Reasonable to whom? To parents who never believed I belonged to myself? To a family who thought adulthood was a suggestion, not a reality? My mother's tears flowed freely now, as she pressed her head to my father's shoulder, her voice muffled. She's pushing us away. She doesn't want us anymore. My father rubbed her back and shook his head disappointedly at me, as if I were the unreasonable one. We're not returning the key, Avery. And that's final. I felt something inside me harden. Break, maybe. But whatever it was, it made my voice come out calm, eerily calm. Then I'll change the locks. My mother's head snapped up. Her tears stopped instantly, replaced by wide-eyed disbelief. You wouldn't dare. Watch me, I said. For a moment, the room went dead silent, except for the faint ticking of the kitchen clock. My mother stared at me like she didn't recognize me, like I had become something dangerous, ungrateful, disloyal. Maybe in her mind, I had. But for the first time in years, I felt the faintest flicker of power, small, fragile, but real. I didn't wait for more dramatics. I didn't wait for the guilt, the manipulation, the accusations that I knew would follow. I picked up my bag, turned my back to their stunned expressions, and walked out of the house without another word. The smell of apple pie followed me out the door like a ghost of the family we pretended to be, but I didn't look back. And as I slid into my car and started the engine, one thought repeated quietly, relentlessly in my mind. If they won't respect my boundaries willingly, I'll build ones they can't cross. Changing the locks felt like taking my first real breath in months. I called a locksmith the same evening I left my parents' house, watching from the hallway as he removed the old deadbolt and installed a new one that clicked shut with a satisfying finality. When he handed me the fresh set of keys, 3 copies, all mine, I felt an almost childlike relief, as if I had built a wall tall enough to finally keep the world out. For the next 3 weeks, everything was quiet, peaceful. My apartment remained exactly the way I left it each morning, couch pillows untouched, fridge unjudged, closet organized, bed still perfectly made. I started sleeping better. I left my laptop on the coffee table without worrying someone might open it. For the first time since moving out, I actually felt at home. I began to believe, cautiously, that maybe the boundary I'd forced into place was finally working. But boundaries don't work on people who refuse to recognize them. And in my family, refusal had been an art form for decades. It was a Thursday evening when everything shattered again. I had come home late after a long day at the office, my shoulders sore, eyelids heavy, craving nothing but silence and takeout. When I opened my door, secured with my lock and my key, I heard the soft hum of the television before I even stepped fully inside. My heart lurched. The living room lights were on. And sitting on my sofa, legs crossed neatly, a mug of tea steaming on the coffee table as though she owned the place, was my mother. For a moment, the world tilted. I gripped the doorknob, dizzy, trying to make sense of the impossible. 3 weeks. 3 weeks of peace, ripped apart in an instant. Mom? My voice cracked. How did you get in here? She smiled warmly, as if this were the most normal kind of welcome home surprise. Oh good, you're back. I was starting to worry you'd be late. She took a sip of her tea. Chamomile. She always drank chamomile in the evenings. That's not what I asked, I said, my chest tightening. How did you get in? She waved a hand dismissively, as though logistics bored her. I called your landlord, of course. Mr. Halstead? Nice man. Very understanding. She pronounced understanding like she deserved applause for her ability to charm him. My stomach dropped. You called my landlord? She nodded, proud. I told him I was concerned because you weren't answering my calls. I said you'd been acting depressed lately, working too hard, not coming out of the apartment. That you might, well, you know. She let the sentence hang suggestively, as if implying I might harm myself. Naturally, he panicked a little. He came to check. The locks were changed, so he didn't have a key anymore. I explained it was a safety issue and asked for temporary access so I could check on you myself. I felt sick. Mom, you lied. You told him I was mentally unstable just so you could get a key? She shrugged. I didn't lie. You have been distant, and you work too much. And you never answer fast enough. I worry, Avery. A mother's intuition is never wrong. I stared at her, stunned. You manipulated my landlord, I whispered. Do you understand how messed up that is? She frowned at my tone. Avery, why are you talking so weird? I'm your mother. If I'm worried, I'm going to get inside. The locks you changed made it impossible for me to check on you. So, I solved the problem. Mom, this is illegal, I said, my voice rising. Entering someone's home without their consent is illegal. Even if you're family. She stood up now. Affronted. Illegal? Illegal, Avery? I'm trying to keep my daughter alive and you're quoting law at me? Heat flared behind my eyes. I wasn't in danger. I wasn't missing. I wasn't depressed. I just wanted privacy. Privacy? She repeated, incredulous. Privacy from your own mother? What are you hiding that's so important? That question, sharp, suspicious, dripping with entitlement, slammed into me like a punch. It was the same question she asked when she read my journal as a teenager. The same one she asked when she scanned my texts, my call logs, my calendar. In her world, wanting privacy was proof of guilt. I stepped forward, keeping my voice steady only by force. Mom, you need to leave. She crossed her arms. I'm not leaving until we talk about this properly. There is nothing to talk about. She stared at me like I was being unreasonable. I have every right. No, I said louder. You don't. Her eyes narrowed. We'll see what your father says. She grabbed her purse, muttering in Vietnamese under her breath about how ungrateful I'd become, how American individualism had corrupted me, how Lily would never treat her this way. She walked out, but not before giving me a long, disappointed look that tried just as it always had to make me feel like I was the problem. The door clicked shut behind her. My legs felt weak. I stood in the middle of my living room, the room she had violated again, and felt shame, anger, and helplessness swirl together so violently I thought I might collapse. But instead, I turned on my laptop. I typed an email to my landlord, a long one. Professional, direct. Detailing that no one, no parent, no sibling, no acquaintance is authorized to enter my apartment under any circumstance without my written permission. I copied the leasing office. I demanded all spare keys be accounted for and secured. I requested documentation of who had been granted temporary access, and when. And when I hit send, my hands were shaking. But even then, somewhere deep in my gut, I knew it wouldn't be enough. My mother had crossed every boundary I'd ever tried to draw, and each time she found a new way around it, as though my privacy were a puzzle she was determined to solve. I just didn't know yet that what she did next would make everything that happened before look benign. My mother had stopped respecting locked doors a long time ago. Now, she was learning how to bypass systems, rules, and people too. And she wasn't done. I didn't want to admit it, but after seeing Lily climbing through my window on camera, after watching my mother tear open my mail and handle my belongings like they were props in her personal drama, something inside me cracked open. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't relax in my own home. Every creak of the building made my body tense, expecting the doorknob to turn or the balcony door to slide open. My apartment, my sanctuary, had become a stage for their violations. So I booked a therapy session. Not because I wanted to talk about my family, but because I needed someone neutral to tell me whether I was losing my mind or whether this really was as unhealthy as it felt. My therapist listened quietly as I explained everything: the childhood invasions of privacy, the first break-in, the key manipulation with the landlord, the window climbing, the live streaming in my bedroom. When I finished, she exhaled slowly and said two words that changed everything: "This is enmeshment." Then she added, "And deeply violating." I blinked at her. Enmeshment? She nodded. It's when a family has no emotional or physical boundaries, when the parent sees the child as an extension of themselves. Your mother believes access equals love. She does not recognize your autonomy. She does not acknowledge your adulthood. But she thinks she's helping, I whispered. Control often wears the mask of concern. She replied gently. It's still control. Something in me unwound painfully, like a tight knot being pulled loose. She continued, Avery, you are not safe in your home. Not emotionally, not psychologically, and frankly not physically if people are entering without consent. You need distance. Real distance. You mean move? Yes, she said. And don't tell them where. That sentence settled over me like a truth I had always known but never dared imagine. Don't tell them where. Because if they knew, they would show up. They always showed up. That night, lying in bed staring at a ceiling that no longer felt like mine, I made a decision. I opened my laptop and began searching for apartments not in the same complex, not even in the same neighborhood. I needed somewhere secure, somewhere anonymous, somewhere they couldn't charm or manipulate their way into. And that's when I found it. A newly renovated building near Union Station, a high-rise with keycard-required elevators, 24/7 front desk staff, and hallway cameras every 15 feet. A place where no one could enter, without logging their identity and purpose. A place built for privacy. For boundaries. For new beginnings. I scheduled a tour for the next morning. Walking through the lobby felt like stepping into another world. Marble floors, warm lighting, a concierge who greeted me by name after checking ID. The elevator required a keycard swipe just to select a floor. The apartment itself was small but beautiful, high windows overlooking the city, hardwood floors, a kitchen that smelled of fresh paint and safety. Safety. The one thing I hadn't felt in months. I signed the lease on the spot. Then came the logistics. I didn't want my family to suspect anything, so everything had to happen quietly. Secretly. I hired a moving company under my work email. I pre-packed the smaller items into boxes after midnight, when the building was silent. Two close colleagues, Marisol and Jonah, offered to help after I reluctantly confessed what was happening. They came by late at night with hoodies and baseball caps like we were carrying out a classified operation. We packed everything carefully, whispering even though no one was around. Your mom really climbed through the window? Jonah whispered as he taped a box. My sister, I corrected. My mom just walked in through the front door like she always does. He shook his head. Girl, you're not moving. You're escaping. And that's exactly what it felt like. A quiet escape. We loaded the boxes into the mover's truck, under the cover of darkness, the hallway dim and empty. By 2 a.m., my entire life was stacked inside a truck heading across Denver. Before locking the door for the last time, I stood in the middle of the now empty apartment. The walls looked bare, but somehow they seemed to breathe easier without my things, as if the space itself were relieved I was leaving. I cleaned the counters, swept the floors, wiped down the windowsills partly out of habit, partly because I wanted no loose threads. No evidence. No lingering reasons for my family to believe they still had a claim here. Then I placed the old key, my mother's favorite weapon, inside an envelope addressed to the landlord and slid it into the building's mailbox. No note. No explanation. No forwarding address. When I stepped outside, the night air felt different on my skin, lighter, sharper, almost electric. I climbed into Jonah's car, and as the complex shrank in the rearview mirror, I felt something I hadn't let myself feel in years: hope. For the first time in my life, I was going somewhere my family couldn't follow. Not because I didn't love them, but because loving them had become a full-time job that cost me my peace, my privacy, my autonomy. At my new building, the doorman checked my ID, registered my name, and handed me a keycard, sleek, black, and silent. He pointed toward the elevator. "You're all set, Miss Lane. Welcome home." Home. A place no one had access to but me. A place where no one knew the unit number. A place where I could finally exhale and rebuild myself without being watched, interrupted, or violated. As the elevator doors closed and the numbers blinked upward floor by floor, I let myself imagine a future where my life belonged to me again. A future where locked doors didn't invite confrontation. A future where my mother's voice wasn't the narrator of my every decision. I didn't know it yet, but disappearing fully, quietly, intentionally would force my family into a spiral I never anticipated. But for now, in that new apartment, standing in an empty living room bathed in city light, one truth echoed softly but powerfully inside me: I didn't run away. I finally walked toward myself. For the first 72 hours in my new apartment, I turned my phone face down, silenced notifications, and let myself dissolve into the quiet. I needed the stillness, like oxygen. I slept with both bedroom doors locked. I woke up slowly, without fear that footsteps might be in my hallway. I arranged my new kitchen exactly the way I wanted and knew it would stay that way. It was the calmest, most grounded I had felt since childhood. But on the third morning, when I finally picked up my phone, the screen lit up like a wildfire: missed calls from Mom, Dad, Lily, unknown numbers, even neighbors from my old building. 37 missed calls from my mother alone. 21 from Lily, 8 from Dad, a handful of frantic texts. "Avery? Where are you? Answer right now. This is not funny. We're coming over." And from Lily, "Mom is freaking out. You need to stop being dramatic and text." Then, beneath that, a public Facebook post. "My sister Avery is missing. Please pray she comes home." Missing. Missing? The word felt surreal, like she was describing someone else. But of course Lily posted it. Drama was her currency. I put my phone down and inhaled slowly, trying to steady myself. They didn't know where I lived. They couldn't reach me. They couldn't walk in. The panic they were experiencing, panic I had lived with for years, was finally something they had to sit with alone. I wasn't prepared for how quickly it would escalate into chaos. When no one heard from me for 3 days and my old landlord confirmed I wasn't at the apartment anymore, they made the only assumption their anxious, codependent minds could manage: I must be in danger. Of course, it never occurred to them that I had chosen not to answer. Choice was never something they believed I had. And that was how the storm began. Later, through police reports and a very embarrassed voicemail from my father, I would learn exactly what happened. But the gist was this: they panicked themselves into a criminal incident. On the morning of day 3, Mom, Dad, and Lily drove to my old apartment complex. They marched straight to my former door, expecting to walk in and find, what? A clue? A body? A neatly written explanation of my whereabouts? I can only imagine the shock when the door opened, not into my familiar space, but into boxes belonging to strangers. The young couple who had signed the lease after me, Jake and Marissa, were inside unpacking when they heard loud banging on the door. When they opened it, they found my mother, wild-eyed, shouting, "Where is my daughter? What have you done to her?" Behind her, my dad looked frantic, and Lily was pacing like a trapped cat. Jake tried explaining calmly that they had just moved in. Mom didn't hear it. "This is my daughter's apartment," she snapped. "She lives here. We're going inside." She shoved against the door, but Jake blocked her. Then Lily, convinced she was a junior detective, walked away from the group and tried to climb the balcony railing, just like she had done at my place before. Except this time, she slipped on the metal edge and ended up dangling halfway while screaming for my father to give her a boost. My dad panicked, grabbed her legs and tried to push her upward, and to the couple inside. It looked like two adults attempting to break into their home. Marissa, terrified, called 911 immediately. "There are strangers trying to force their way into our apartment. One is climbing the balcony. Please send someone now." Meanwhile, my mother kept pounding on the door, yelling in English and Vietnamese, demanding answers. She was so convinced something terrible had happened to me that she didn't stop for a second to consider that what she was doing was an actual crime. When the police arrived, the scene was so chaotic they drew their weapons until everyone froze in place. Lily burst into tears mid-balcony scramble. My mother started shouting at the officers that they were wasting time while her daughter was missing and possibly harmed. My father kept trying to explain that they weren't criminals, that they were just worried parents, but the officers didn't see worried parents. They saw three adults attempting to break into a private residence. And legally, that's exactly what it was. They separated the three of them, questioned them individually, and took statements from the new tenants, who were understandably shaken. The officers had no reason to believe anything my family said. They had no proof that I had ever lived there besides old mail they found in the building's outgoing bin. Eventually, when my mother's hysteria escalated into a full meltdown, one of the officers tried to calm her and said, "Ma'am, we need to contact your daughter to verify her safety. Do you have her phone number?" My mother sobbed that I wasn't answering. So the officer looked up my name through dispatch and called the emergency contact number associated with my old lease, my cell phone. I was in my new apartment folding kitchen towels when the phone rang. Unknown number. Normally, I don't answer unknown numbers, but something nudged me. I picked up. "Hello, is this Avery Lane?" "Yes. This is Officer Ramirez with the Denver Police Department. Are you safe right now?" My blood turned cold. "Yes," I said slowly. "Why?" "There have been multiple reports from your family stating you may be missing or harmed." I let out a breath. "I'm not missing. I just moved." A pause. Then, "Miss Lane, your family is currently being detained for attempting to break into your former residence." For a moment, I said nothing. Absolutely nothing. My brain stalled between disbelief and a dark, exhausted sort of predictability. Of course they did. Of course, their panic would balloon into a spectacle. Of course they would violate boundaries so intensely that the police had to intervene. "Of course," I whispered. The officer asked if I could come to the station to clarify the situation. I agreed. But before hanging up, she added gently, "Miss Lane, just so you're aware, they were very distressed. But what they did is a serious offense." "I know," I said quietly. "It always is. They just never think it applies to them." Perforad shicks, in his nose and italis. When I hung up, I stood in the middle of my spotless, silent apartment, the city lights stretching across the window like faraway stars. For years, I had begged them to see my boundaries. For years, they had walked right through everyone. Now the world, the law, was finally forcing them to stop. And this time, I wasn't the one panicking. The police station was quieter than I expected. Not silent. Phones rang occasionally, doors opened and shut, officers moved briskly through hallways, but quieter than the chaos that had led all of us there. A receptionist directed me to a small conference room where an officer waited. When I stepped inside, the first thing I saw was my mother. She was seated at the table, shoulders trembling, mascara smudged in uneven streaks down her cheeks. My father sat stiffly beside her, jaw locked, hands clasped so tightly his knuckles had turned white. Lily paced in the corner like a restless child, arms folded, eyes darting everywhere but toward me. The moment my mother saw me, she burst into fresh tears. "Avery," she cried, her voice shrill with a kind of desperation that felt rehearsed. "If you hadn't disappeared, none of this would have happened. Do you know what we've been through these past days? We thought you could have been. Her voice broke, and she covered her mouth dramatically. I didn't move toward her. I didn't hug her. I didn't apologize. For the first time in my life, I refused to fold myself into her emotional storm. Instead, I took the seat across from them. Straight-backed, calm, steady. The officer who had called me Officer Ramirez stood to the side, watching closely. My mother reached across the table as if to grab my hand, but I slid mine out of reach before she could touch me. Her face crumpled at the rejection. Avery, she said again, softer. If you hadn't run away from home, we wouldn't have ended up like this. We wouldn't be here if you hadn't disappeared without telling us anything. I exhaled slowly. Mom, I said, voice measured, I didn't disappear. I moved. And the police had to get involved because you tried to break into someone else's apartment. Dad huffed in frustration. We thought you were kidnapped. What were we supposed to do? You ignored every call. And creases, and intonate. You ignored every boundary, I corrected. Lily rolled her eyes. Can we not act like you're some helpless victim? You made this into a big deal for no reason. Mom was worried. I was worried. I turned to her, my expression unmoving. You climbed onto someone's balcony, Lily. You could have been arrested. She scoffed. Maybe if you didn't hide like a criminal, none of that would have happened. That was when Officer Ramirez stepped forward. Actually, she said firmly, looking each of them in the eye. Miss Lane hasn't done anything wrong. Moving without informing family is not a crime. Attempted entry into a residence that is no longer your legal property, however, is. My parents stiffened. In the United States, Ramirez continued, an adult's right to privacy outweighs family ties. Always. What you did today could have resulted in charges. My mother blinked rapidly. But we're family. It's not passive. That doesn't override the law, the officer said. Silence fell over the table. Heavy, tense, and finally honest. I leaned forward, folding my hands. We are here because of choices you made. Not because of mine. And we're not leaving until we address the truth. All of it. My mother's chin quivered. Avery, don't talk to me like I'm. You read my mail. I said. She froze. You opened my packages. You came into my home without permission. Multiple times. My voice remained level. You gave Lily my key. You let her use my space while I was gone. She live-streamed in my bedroom like it was her own. Lily flushed bright red. It was just for fun. It was my room, I said. My private space. And you had no right. My father cleared his throat. Avery, we were trying to take care of you. You're alone in the city. You knew everything, I cut in. You watched them violate my space and you did nothing to stop it. His eyes dropped. My mother's lips trembled. We're your parents. We need to know you're safe. Being safe, I said quietly, requires having a home where no one breaks in. Including family. Their faces shifted shock first, then disbelief, then a defensive panic that had nowhere else to go. Without the ability to guilt or overpower me, they didn't know how to respond. My silence had created something unfamiliar to them. Accountability. So, I continued. Here are the boundaries if you want to remain in my life. I said. These are not negotiable. My mother leaned back like she was bracing for impact. Lily sighed loudly. My father forced himself to sit straighter. 1, I said. No one gets my new address. Ever. Not unless I choose to give it. My mother's eyes widened. Avery. 2, I continued. We only meet in public places or at your home. Never mine. My father frowned. That seems extreme. I ignored him. And 3, you will not enter any physical or digital space of mine without explicit permission. That includes apartments, mail, accounts, messages, social media, everything. Lily scoffed. So dramatic. If these are violated, I said evenly, I will cut contact. Completely. No arguments. No explanations. No apologies. The room went utterly still. My mother stared at me as if she were seeing a stranger, someone she couldn't control, someone who had slipped out of the tight grip she had maintained for decades. Her voice came out small. Avery. You've changed. I finally have, I replied. Officer Ramirez placed a document on the table, a simple written agreement outlining the boundaries we had discussed. A family privacy commitment, she called it. Not legally binding, but powerful enough to formalize what was said. My parents exchanged looks torn between indignation and fear. But fear won. Fear of losing me, fear of losing the illusion of closeness they claimed to cherish. One by one, they signed. First my father, face strained. Then my mother, hand shaking. Then Lily, rolling her eyes, but signing anyway. When the papers slid back across the table to me, all three signatures glistening in black ink, something inside me loosened like a knot pulled free for the first time in my life. My mother looked at me, bewildered. I never thought you'd talk to us like this. I never thought I'd have to, I said. And for the first time ever, I watched them sit across from me without power, only consequence. 14 months later, the city outside my window no longer feels like something I have to survive, it feels like something I finally get to live in. Denver's skyline glows against the glass wall of my apartment, each light blinking like a quiet affirmation that I made the right choice, that every painful boundary I set was a step toward breathing freely again. My new building is calm, steady, predictable. No unexpected keys turning in locks, no shadows hovering by my door. No voices calling my name from inside my own living room. Just me, my space, and a life unfolding at a pace that belongs only to me. The mornings are different now. I roll out my yoga mat on the balcony before the sun fully lifts over the mountains. I stretch, breathe, hold, release. Therapy taught me how to come back into my body after years of being stretched thin by other people's wants. I journal now, without fear of someone flipping through the pages. I grocery shop, without hearing Karen's voice in my head, criticizing every item. My home is quiet, but the quiet is no longer suffocating, it's restorative. Work has blossomed in a way I never expected. My team trusts me, my designs are finally being recognized, and for the first time, I feel like I have a community built on choice rather than obligation. I've made friends, real ones. People who knock before entering any space, people who ask instead of assume, people who know the version of me that existed only after I escaped the version my family tried to sculpt. Even my therapist said once, half joking, "Avery, you're no longer surviving your life. You're authoring it." Thank you. As for my family, our relationship has adjusted into something strange but functional, like a limb that once broke and healed, but not in the same shape. We see each other maybe once or twice a month at a quiet coffee shop near Union Station. A public place. Neutral ground. My mother no longer asks for my address. She doesn't reach for my phone or comment on what I eat. She sits across from me with a kind of cautious respect, like someone visiting a museum exhibit labeled "Do Not Touch." My father has softened too. He speaks less, listens more, and although he will never say the words out loud, I know he understands now that love isn't a justification for possession. And Lily, my wild, dramatic, boundary-ignoring sister, has changed in ways I never imagined. The embarrassment she felt after being questioned by police seemed to shock her into adulthood. She started working part-time at a photography studio, taking on freelance gigs, learning what it means to earn something instead of having it handed to her. She still complains, still overshares on social media, still rolls her eyes too dramatically, but she no longer barges into my life like it's her inherited right. Some days she even apologizes. Awkwardly, in half sentences that trail off before they reach the words sorry. But it's something. And that something is enough. Our meetings are shorter now. Lighter. Still awkward, still imperfect, but no longer wrapped in the sticky web of control and guilt that suffocated me for years. My mother once whispered across her coffee cup, "I miss the days when you were little and needed me." I sipped my latte slowly and replied, "You can still be in my life. Just not in my house." She nodded, not with joy, but with understanding. Sometimes, healing looks like that. And somewhere along that long, quiet year, I realized something profound. I do still love them. But I also love myself. And those two truths can exist at the same time. You can love your family and still need a locked door. You can care for them deeply while also protecting the parts of yourself they were never meant to handle. Boundaries aren't punishments, they're invitations. They say, if you want to be in my life, here is how to do it without breaking me. Depict are looking. So, here is the lesson I want to leave with you, whoever you are, wherever you're watching from. Your peace is not selfish. Your privacy is not disrespect. Your boundaries are the bridge, not the barrier to healthier relationships. Anyone who loves you will learn to meet you there. Tonight, as I stand in front of my apartment, the place where my life finally feels like mine, I hold my key in my hand. The metal is warm from my palm, the weight of it familiar and grounding. I slide it into the lock, hearing the soft click that has become my favorite sound in the world. Then I open the door. For the first time in my life, I walk into a home where no one can follow unless I invite them. And that, more than anything, is what freedom feels like.